Welcome to Generous Impact. I'm your host, Amanda Brummett. Today's guest, Dr. Sarah Matt, reminds us that being busy doesn't mean being unavailable for the things that feed your soul. Despite a demanding career in health tech, Sarah finds time to teach medical students, serve as a volunteer firefighter, and practice charity medicine, all while building a career that blends clinical work, leadership, and writing. In this conversation, we talk about why it matters to keep those meaningful pieces of you and how even small commitments to giving back can have a big ripple effect. Well, Sarah, let's start with who you are personally and professionally.
I love that question. And I'm glad you asked about personally too. So I started out as a surgeon and I felt very, I'd say, confined at the bedside and I wanted to make more impact. So I actually pivoted my whole career. I went to UT Austin for my MBA and made my way into the tech sector right after my training. And so I've been at all the EMRs people love to hate, mid-sized places like NextGen Healthcare, working with critical access hospitals, patient engagement, you name it, several startups. I was at a bunch of different places in Austin when I lived there. It was great. I used to ride my bike downtown and drink my kombucha on tap. But I ended up in a mature startup called ESO that's still in the domain, focused on pre-hospital. So firefighters, paramedics, EMTs. And then I spent a long time at Oracle. So I built out their cloud business for healthcare and life sciences around the world. Got to help them acquire Cerner, which was a crazy time, but really amazing from an impact perspective. And then went back to startups afterwards. So my last startup, I was a chief strategy officer at a place called Symvato, focused on remote robotic surgery, which again, access is very near and dear to my heart. And so it was a great story there. And then right now I'm working on launching my book. So I'm on my book tour and my book's coming out in December with Wiley called The Borderless Healthcare Revolution. Now, personally, I live in upstate New York, back in my hometown, so I can be close to my family. I have 4 boys and I'm a volunteer firefighter and I play roller derby.
How fun. That sounds also dangerous.
I have a high impact life. We'll put it that way.
And I definitely encourage people to go read your book when it comes out in December. I dove into it thinking it was for healthcare people, and it absolutely is. All my healthcare people that are listening, you're going to love it, but it's very digestible to anybody that cares about technology, healthcare, access to healthcare. And we have listeners a lot in Texas, a lot in California, but spread out around the country. But for our people that are in Austin, there's tons of local stories, which is really nice to read.
Glad you liked it.
Yeah. And then before we dive into the volunteering and warm and fuzzy stuff, I do want to go back to your career as a surgeon. Did I read properly that not only were you a general surgeon, but you were a general surgeon that specialized in burns?
Yes. So my fellowship was in burns.
Yeah. So you picked a really hard specialty that brings a lot of physical needs, but also emotional needs. And I don't know, that just kind of said something to me about it, you as a human, that you would pick burns.
I appreciate that. I think there's hard parts of every single specialty for sure. On the burn side, I come from a family where my little brother's a firefighter. And so I'd been in that community before. I was a firefighter when I was in college and med school, and I've continued now as an adult afterwards. And so that, I'd say, specialty and area was something that I had been a part of in different contexts. One of the other things I love about burns in particular is that it really is a team sport. And so everything you do is the nurses, physical therapists, other kinds of therapists, doctors all together working for the benefit of patients. And I really like that team mentality.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've built a career with very high level leadership roles, but also still teaching, still volunteering, still serving your community. You're also you're an author. How do you find time for all of this? And more importantly, how do you make time for it and why?
For me, I've always tried to focus on things that I think are impactful and worth doing. And that can be a very privileged place to be because some days you have to do your job because you got to put food on the table. And some days you've got to do X, Y, or Z. I think I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to make some of those choices over the years and I've been successful. So one thing that's always been really important to me, even when I left kind of full-time practice and went to tech, was seeing patients. I wanted to be a part of my career no matter what, something I didn't want to lose. So even when I was starting out in my tech career, I always did a couple shifts a month at either a charity clinic or an urgent care. And so that's been something I've always done for the purpose of, hey, if I don't use this, I'm going to lose this. And this is important to me. And so that was an intentional piece that I added as part of my day job in a way. And actually, at several of my organizations, I was able to negotiate time to do that. And I think that you can surprise yourself by what you ask for, especially in some of these executive roles.
That's really smart, especially because of the companies you worked for and very high level roles. It would be very easy to get out of touch with normal humans that are your patients, but even regular physicians that are using your products. So yeah, I appreciate that you had the wherewithal to see that you needed that to stay in touch. And then let's talk about your experience as a volunteer firefighter. So how did this start did your little brother inspire it? Did you start before him?
So we cannot say publicly on a podcast that my brother had any positive influence because that would totally get to his head. But this is his passion. He actually just retired after 20 years in the fire service this past summer. But when I was in undergrad, I got my EMT because I wanted to do something so I could touch patients. But the only way to use your EMT in upstate New York was to join a fire department. And I remember telling my brother, there's no way I'm going to do any of that fire stuff. That's what you do. I joined the fire department really close to where I went to college. And to do the EMS stuff, you had to do the basic fire classes. And so I did them and I really, really enjoyed them. I've always been an athlete for a long time. I still play sports today as an adult. And so the physical nature of it, the mental nature of it, the impact nature of it really spoke to me. And so through college, I was a volunteer down in Cayuga Heights here in upstate New York. In med school, when I was at SUNY Upstate, I joined the fire department here in Fayetteville, New York. And then halfway through med school, things got really busy. And then I had to do all the doctoring. But after COVID, when I moved back to my hometown, an actual place where there were volunteers, I started up again here in Fayetteville, New York at my old department. So I went through the ranks and started from scratch and went back to being an interior firefighter and driving the fire engine. And I was doing a lot of work there until this past spring when I broke my leg. So I've been just coming back to it. And right now I'm focusing mostly on public education for the fire department and working on getting cleared on more of the vehicles so I can be a better driver and operator.
That didn't happen in roller derby, did it?
It totally happened playing roller derby.
So you've been benched at the fire department to driving and educating, but you're still doing the roller derby.
Yes, because it's different between having a leg that you trust to play a sport where you can get out anytime you need to versus a leg you can trust when lives are on the line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is awesome. I love all of this. And then what about, when you and I talked before, you mentioned that you still do charity medicine in the middle of nowhere. So tell us about that and how that keeps you connected to your day job.
After COVID kind of simmered a little bit, I was getting the itch. I was like, I have to go see patients again. And especially as a volunteer, most of the volunteer and charity clinics kind of shut down during COVID, not just from a liability perspective, but, it was a very difficult time for places to stay afloat. So I actually was connected with a really amazing charity clinic here in Oneida, New York. It's about a half an hour east of where I live. And it's a tough town. So, it was a bustling place many years ago, but the way the economy has hit it, it's been treated pretty hard in the last couple decades. And so it's a lot of poor whites, migrant workers, Amish folks. And again, it's a free clinic, the Mary Rose Clinic, and it's right across, from the VFW field and next to a Dollar General, because that's where it is. It's where people can get to it. And so we provide internal medicine care to folks with no insurance. And so I see people who have no care, may not have had care for a while, or maybe have never had care.
Yeah. Wow. How does that impact? Obviously, it's impacted your book, but your day-to-day work.
I think for me, first of all, sometimes we get into our own bubbles around the people we live near. Oh, our kids go to school with these people. And I think you forget about the real people in the world, everyone else, because I admit I'm in a totally privileged place. I'm very lucky to have a great place to live here and a great family, but not everyone has that. And so to be able to see people in this environment, to be essentially their concierge doctor, as opposed to going anywhere else where they usually are pushed away in some fashion, whether it's with words or physically. I love to be able to produce that care for them and produce those relationships that I don't think they're getting from other places, but I have the ability to provide them because it's in a charity setting. I'm not required to see 100 gazillion patients every day. I'm not required to do a lot of the, I'd say, check boxes and things like that because we're a safety net clinic. I get to practice on paper. And so we don't have to go through a lot of the hoops that are necessary in an enterprise system because we are the last net. And so this is what they get cared for, or they get nothing at all.
Wow, that's incredible that you're able to bring that level of care to people that otherwise may not get any care.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you've written a lot about access in your book, and I loved every piece that I read, including the international lens. I tend to forget that this isn't an American problem, it's an international problem. I really appreciated everything you shared about how other countries have attempted to address this. My husband and I do a lot of work with an NGO in South Sudan. And so as you're talking about all the things going on in the neighboring countries, it really resonated because we've been there, we've seen it. But I'm getting to a question here. How do all your experiences around healthcare access and systems shape your perspective on that today, and specifically for leaders?
Right now, we're in a very polarized time. And so I feel like there's not a lot of topics people can come together on.
Yeah.
So as a leader, what can we all come together on in healthcare? And to me, that's healthcare access. If I ask anyone in any room, wherever I am, about access, everyone has a terrible access story, whether it's their parents, their kids, their themselves. And so I feel like this is a topic we can all come together on. And from a leadership perspective, there's not many important, impactful topics we can talk about that everyone can get together on. So first, I think that's important. The second piece is that as a healthcare and technology leader, healthcare is in a crisis. We have been doing the best we can for a long time, but the way that retention's happening with nurses and doctors, the way that our insurance system and our funding pieces are kind of, we'll say, a lot of people are now being kind of excluded from the systems. That's hard. And I'm concerned that how we move forward will impact not just healthcare, but, more than that, the ability of people to work, the ability for people to get educated, the ability for people to live. And so I think that from a healthcare leadership perspective, how can we impact the populations that are around us? From a technology perspective, everyone agrees that healthcare is the hot market to be in. And so as a builder, how can we build an access from the beginning? How can we make that a foundational part of the solutions we bring to bear? Not because it's charitable, but because it's actually good business. And it's a great way to form your solutions so that you can be successful.
Yeah, most definitely. It is good for everybody, for everyone to have basic access to healthcare. It's just like education. The data is good. It is solid. And I really appreciate your approach to that. Well, if there are people that are listening today and thinking, I don't have time to do all these things that Sarah does, I've got X, Y, and Z going on in my life, what advice would you give them to help them make time for volunteerism, passion projects, and just making the time?
So I've considered my entire, we'll say, career and life like a portfolio for a long time.
Yeah.
And just recently, literally like last week, someone suggested The Portfolio Life, which is a book out there that you should look up on Amazon. Big fan. And it really describes a lot of what I actually do and have done, but in a CRISP framework. So good to them. But what I think it is there's lots of things that you want for your life and career, whether it's engagement with friends and family, whether it's being able to tell jokes at work, whether it's impact and what that means. And I think a lot of folks are looking for that in only one place. And I think that might have worked for our parents and grandparents. You work at the plant, you get promoted at the plant, all your friends work at the plant is your life. It's not that way anymore. And so how can you gain different things from different places? So for me, I've gained a lot from working in a charity clinic because it fills up that cup. It makes me feel like I'm making a real direct impact. When I work in high tech, I feel like I'm using my brain. I feel like I'm building businesses that are going to be doing amazing things. I get that scale. And then on the personal front, I have 4 kids and I make sure I spend time with them. I go to soccer games. I do all these different things because I like that. So when you think about all the different parts of your life and what you're doing, what do you want? Take out the stuff that doesn't matter. I think because I have 4 kids, I have 4 boys. Let's just be honest. I have 4 boys that anything that's not important kind of gets burned and put to the side. So do I have the cleanest house? No. Does it drive my mother crazy? Yes. But it's not nearly as important to me as spending time with the people that I think are important.
That is huge. I will add to it, hire out things that you don't love and that don't bring you joy if you have the resources to do that.
Exactly.
Okay, last question. Everything you've talked about is wildly inspiring. Makes me think I should watch less TV and do a little bit more good stuff.
No. That may be part of it. So this morning, I got myself on the rowing machine.
Yeah.
Only reason I got on was because I was watching some terribly trashy reality television. So understand the impact you want to make, understand what's going to get you there. That doesn't mean watching less TV. That might be part of the portfolio.
So who or what inspires you?
That's a good question. I think regular people that I may not know inspire me. When I see patients come to my clinic and tell me some insane story and then are going to go to work afterward, I'm like, wow, I don't know if I could have handled that. That's inspiring. When I see my kids growing up in a world where there's technology, there's AI, there's all these different, I say, stressors and different stakeholders than when we were growing up, I think to myself, wow, wonder what it would have been like if I had grown up like that. That's interesting, inspiring. And then when I see, I'd say, people like my parents who are long retired, are still impacting the community, are still volunteering, are still trying to do great work in their communities, that's inspiring to me too. Because it doesn't matter how old you are, how much money you make, in terms of what you can do to make the world better in different ways. And that may just be putting a smile on one other person during the day. It doesn't have to be expensive.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your passion. And thank you for making time to still do good in the world while you're building good things at a corporate level, but also those micro interactions are having impact in the world. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Amanda.
Also, well done for being able to take a compliment. There are very, very few adult women I know that can just take a compliment, and you do it beautifully and with grace.
It's something I've worked on actually over the years. Just so you know, like, I think you're right. Most people don't know how to take a compliment. And I think as part of my, I'd say, over the last 5 years, really coming into the skin of being a total badass and understanding that I am, being able to take that compliment's really important.
Yeah.
But again, like, there's bridge ways to do it, as you mentioned.
Most definitely. Yeah. Well, Sarah, I have a suspicion our listeners are really jazzed about everything you've talked about. So if they want to learn more about your work, if they want to find your book, where do they find you and stay connected?
So you can find the book, The Borderless Healthcare Revolution, on all the major retailers. It's on pre-sale right now. It's not going anywhere. But the best place to go is drsarahmatt.com. And that has information about me, my book, all the different pieces. So I'd love to engage and connect with folks everywhere.
Fabulous. Well, thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Amanda.
Huge thanks to Dr. Sarah Matt for reminding us that purpose and service don't wait until life slows down. They create balance when life speeds up. If today's conversation inspired you, take a cue from Sarah. Teach, volunteer, or mentor someone who could use your experience. Small acts of generosity add up to a lifelong impact. I'm Amanda Brummett, and this is Generous Impact, where we celebrate the people improving communities. See you next time.